In the cold depths of space, a powerful alien species captures a lone human soldier, expecting to ridicule him as they have done with countless others. But what begins as a simple display of dominance soon turns into a nightmarish mistake. As the aliens mock him, they fail to realize the true strength that lies within the human spirit. What they don't know is that their laughter will soon turn to regret, for this soldier is about to teach them the price of underestimating humanity. The alien ship descended from the black void of space like an immense, glittering phantom, its massive frame cutting through the cosmic silence with an almost predatory elegance. Stars twinkled faintly, their light catching the edges of the ship's sleek metallic surface, giving it an otherworldly glow. To any being observing from below, it would have appeared as if the heavens themselves had decided to descend upon the planet. But on board, the atmosphere was far less poetic. The crew of extraterrestrials moved about with mechanical precision, their cold, calculating eyes fixated on the planet below. They had arrived not as visitors, but as conquerors, no different from any of their past campaigns. Humanity, a species of clumsy creatures scurrying across their homeworld, had always been seen as insignificant, a fleeting blip in the vast expanse of the galaxy. Their technologies were rudimentary, their culture primitive. To the aliens, humans were a nuisance, an unworthy species too bound to their own planet to even dream of exploring the stars. Among the crew was a human soldier, the sole survivor of a failed military operation. He had been captured during an ambush, taken alive when his comrades had fallen in battle. His name, a distant memory, was now irrelevant to his captors. They had stripped him of his identity. He was nothing more than a specimen, an object of curiosity. In the grand scheme of their conquest, he held no value beyond that of an interesting curiosity, a toy to be prodded and poked for entertainment. In the alien observation chamber, the soldier was shackled to the floor, his arms bound tightly, the cold metal clamps biting into his skin. The space around him was sterile and clinical, a stark contrast to the chaos of battle he had just escaped. His eyes, however, betrayed no fear. They were calm, almost eerily so. The aliens watched him with a mixture of amusement and intrigue. They'd never encountered a prisoner quite like this before. A group of the extraterrestrials gathered in front of him, their sharp, angular features twisting into grotesque smirks as they observed their captive. One of them, tall, slender, with gleaming yellow eyes, pointed at the soldier, a hoarse laugh escaping its lips. "Look at this weakling!" it sneered. "A mere speck of dust caught in our grasp. How did they ever survive this long?" The others joined in, their laughter a sound like dry leaves rustling in the wind, harsh and mocking. They pointed at the soldier's bruised face, the cuts on his body, evidence of his futile resistance. "They're so fragile," one of them mused, running a long, spindly finger along the soldier's arm. "One blow, and they're finished." The soldier didn't flinch. He didn't even acknowledge them. His gaze remained steady, unblinking, as though the laughter wasn't directed at him. The alien's words bounced off him like harmless gusts of wind. It was a challenge the likes of which they hadn't anticipated. Another alien, short and stocky with red-tinted skin, stepped forward, holding what appeared to be a device of some sort. "Perhaps we should test how weak they truly are," it said, its voice dripping with derision. It activated the device, sending a jolt of energy through the soldier's body. The soldier gritted his teeth as the shock coursed through him, but he remained silent. The aliens waited for him to scream, to beg for mercy. But there was nothing. The red-skinned alien growled in frustration. No reaction. How utterly disappointing. The others looked at each other, puzzled. This wasn't the reaction they had expected. They had subjected countless species to tests of pain and fear, and each one had crumbled, screaming, begging for release. But this human, this weakling, remained steadfast. Another alien, tall and thin with long tendrils sprouting from its head, leaned in and snickered. Maybe it's the mind that's the problem. Let's see if we can break that. They began a series of psychological manipulations, questions designed to disturb, to unsettle. But the soldier's face remained impassive. They asked him about his home, his people, his world. They tried to induce fear by describing the horrible fate awaiting his species. Yet still, the soldier said nothing. His eyes never wavered, his posture never changed. It was as if they weren't even in the room with him. One of the aliens, the leader of the group, stepped forward, its voice dripping with disdain. "It seems we have a rare breed on our hands," it said. "A human who doesn't break." How entertaining. The others laughed again, but this time there was something off about it. A nervous edge had crept into their voices, as if they were unsure of how to proceed. They had underestimated him, and in that moment, for the briefest of seconds, they began to wonder if they had made a terrible mistake. But the soldier didn't care about their doubts. He had already decided something in his mind. There was no need to speak, no need to beg. He had been captured, yes, but not broken. Not yet. The laughter continued, but in the back of their minds, something was starting to shift. The soldier's silence had become something more, something dangerous, and though they didn't know it yet, it was only a matter of time before the tables would turn. Days blurred into nights aboard the alien ship, as cold metallic corridors stretched endlessly. The soldier remained confined in a small, sterile room, his existence now reduced to little more than an experiment. Outside his cell, the alien crew watched, studied, and scrutinized him, as though he were a specimen in a jar, a mere object to be toyed with. His capture had been anticipated as a moment of triumph, yet it was clear that something far more complex was unfolding. The aliens had expected fear. They expected terror. After all, they had taken countless species before, and everyone had crumbled in the face of their superior technology. Fear was the universal language of captivity. But this human soldier, showed none of it. Weeks passed. The laughter of the aliens had once filled the halls of their ship, mocking the humans' fragile state, but now it was replaced with a murmur of frustration. In the sterile confines of the laboratory, the first experiment began. An alien scientist, sleek and tall with translucent skin that shimmered under the artificial lights, observed the soldier through a viewing window. With a nod from its peers, the scientist activated the machines. Tendrils of energy reached into the soldier's skull, a series of sharp needles probing his brain, scanning for any hint of weakness, any flicker of fear. "Let's see if their primitive instincts can evolve under our scrutiny," the alien mused to itself, tapping a few keys on its console. The soldier sat still, breathing evenly as the machine whirred and hummed. They had expected him to flinch, to cry out in pain, but there was nothing, not a single sound. The scientist's eyes narrowed. The data was unexpected. His brainwaves were stable, remarkably so. No spikes in stress, no signs of mental collapse. In fact, his brain was almost too normal. The soldier's reactions to the pain seemed muted, as if he were detached from the sensation entirely. "Fascinating," the scientist muttered, adjusting the machine's settings. A new wave of energy surged into the soldier's mind. His body twitched. A brief sign of discomfort, but still, no scream. The aliens' mouths twisted into grins, assuming this was part of a long, drawn-out process. They had broken other creatures before. This one would be no different. Hours passed, and the tests continued, stimulating his senses, heightening his pain receptors, testing his endurance. Yet through it all, the soldier remained eerily calm. His heart rate didn't fluctuate. His breathing remained steady. He might as well have been asleep. As the testing session ended, the scientist disconnected the probes with a growl of frustration. "Why isn't this working?" they muttered, glaring at the soldier. This human was meant to be afraid. They had built entire civilizations on the fear they could instill in others. But now, standing in front of them, was a being who did not tremble under their power. The aliens stood in a huddle, discussing their next step. "He's just a soldier," one of them observed, its voice tinged with irritation. "What could he possibly know of fear? It's beneath him." But the leader of the group, the one with the darker, almost shadowed skin, looked at the soldier differently. There was something about the way he refused to react, something unsettling. "No," the leader disagreed. "There's more to him. This human, he's different. We've broken others with less. Why is he resisting?" A second experiment was proposed. They decided to test his mind. Perhaps there, in the recesses of his memories, they would find a crack, a chink in his armor. The soldier was strapped to a chair, his body restrained by the same unyielding shackles that had held him since his capture. The aliens used technology far beyond anything humanity had ever dreamed of, probing deep into the soldier's mind, searching for memories, emotions, desires. They saw flashes of his past, brief images of Earth, moments of peace, snippets of battle. But all they could sense was an overwhelming sense of purpose, a determination that neither time nor pain could extinguish. His memories weren't riddled with fear. They weren't haunted by nightmares or regrets. It was as if the soldier had already made peace with his fate, a silent warrior, unbroken. The aliens' faces contorted with confusion. "How can this be?" one of them hissed. "His mind is too intact. There's no sign of fear, not even doubt." Another alien scientist paced nervously, tapping its spindly fingers together. "We've seen it before," it whispered. "When they show no fear, when they appear detached, it's because they're already ready to die. They've accepted it." The leader considered this and nodded slowly, but unease gnawed at them. "Number, he's not ready to die. He's just different." The alien team grew uneasy, their confident exterior cracking for the first time since the soldier's capture. The experiment had failed. And as they looked at their silent captive, a creeping realization began to form in their minds. This human might not be afraid of them. In fact, he might be the one who had the power to make them afraid. Their laughter had turned to silence, and their confidence had begun to falter. The soldier remained a riddle to his alien captors. His body, beaten and bruised, showed the marks of their cruel experiments, yet his spirit seemed untouched. Despite every test, every attempt to break him, he did not bend. They had tried everything. Mental and physical probes, injections and shocks. But still, the human remained an enigma. The aliens had never encountered a subject like him. Each time they thought they understood him, he defied their expectations. He didn't show fear. He didn't show rage. He didn't show anything. The soldier simply existed, his stoic silence growing more unnerving with each passing day. The aliens had hoped that his outward appearance, his fragile organic form, would reveal his breaking point. But they were mistaken. As they dug deeper, probing his mind with their advanced technology, they encountered something they hadn't anticipated. The human's thoughts were unlike anything they had ever encountered. His mind wasn't chaotic or primitive as they expected. It was sharp, deliberate, and layered in ways they couldn't fully decipher. They had assumed that the human brain would be as fragile as the body it housed, but instead, they were met with an overwhelming sense of resolve. "This is odd," one of the alien researchers murmured as it analyzed the data. "His brain is much more complex than we thought." The soldier's thoughts swirled in patterns that intrigued the aliens, patterns that didn't match any of their previous experiments. His neural activity was precise, calculated, and, in their eyes, abnormal. They tried to dig deeper, hoping to unravel the mystery of his mind. But all they found was an unyielding will, a determination to survive, to endure. "You would think a creature like this would break under pressure," the alien scientist said, staring at the soldier through the observation glass. "But all we've uncovered is his defiance." Their curiosity had started to turn into something else, something more dangerous. The aliens had underestimated humans. Their species might be primitive in comparison, but this soldier was different. He wasn't afraid of them. He wasn't even trying to escape. He just was. And that was what made him terrifying. In their haste to understand, they began to delve deeper into the soldier's memories, searching for any sign of vulnerability. What they found, however, was nothing like the terror they had anticipated. The soldier's memories were sparse, but what they saw left them baffled. There were no screams of terror, no signs of trauma, just fragments of quiet determination. Small, fleeting moments, like a soldier facing overwhelming odds, yet still standing firm. "Where is the fear?" one of them demanded, frustrated by the lack of emotion in the soldier's past. "Why isn't he afraid? Why doesn't he tremble like the others?" The laughter that had once filled the ship began to fade, replaced by an unsettling silence. The alien crew members exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence waning. They had seen many species in their time, from the aggressive to the submissive, but never had they encountered one that seemed so untouched by fear. The soldier's memories weren't of pain or anguish. They were of resolve, of hope that refused to die. The leader of the alien crew, a towering figure with deep violet skin and piercing green eyes, stared at the soldier through the glass. "What are we missing?" the leader muttered under their breath. "What is it that this human has that we can't see?" The soldier's presence was beginning to weigh heavily on them. His silence wasn't weakness. It was a challenge. In the aliens' culture, there was nothing worse than being made to doubt one's superiority. And this human, this weakling, was making them doubt everything. One of the younger aliens, a nervous, jittery creature with spindly limbs, spoke up. Could it be hope? Do humans have hope? The suggestion was met with derision at first. Hope? What a primitive concept. But then, as the thought hung in the air, the aliens started to consider it. They had never encountered a species with hope like this, hope that seemed to transcend circumstance, hope that seemed to burn even in the face of certain defeat. They tried again, this time probing deeper into the soldier's consciousness. They found more memories, all of them simple, yet profound. A moment spent with a loved one, a fleeting glance at a sunset, a quiet sense of purpose that guided the soldier through every challenge. There was no grand vision of victory, no hope for a better world, just a quiet belief that survival was worth fighting for, a belief that never died. The aliens couldn't comprehend it. They had expected to find the cracks in his psyche, the soft spots that would make him bend. But all they found was an iron will, unbreakable and enduring. It was a kind of hope they had never witnessed, a hope that, no matter the test, no matter the pain, the soldier would never give up. And in that realization, the aliens became wary. This human was not the weakling they had thought him to be. He was a force they had no framework for understanding. And though they could not yet see it, this flicker of defiance, this ember of hope, was about to ignite into something far greater than they could ever imagine. Weeks blended into months, and the soldier's time in captivity stretched on. The sterile walls of his cell had become his world, but that world was not as simple as it once appeared. His silence had begun to gnaw at the edges of his captors' minds. What had once been a routine matter of study had now become a matter of obsession. The soldiers, the scientists, even the leaders, they all found themselves drawn to his stillness, his unyielding resistance. He was a puzzle they could not solve, a mystery that refused to unravel. The alien crew that had once laughed at the soldier's plight now whispered in corridors, wondering aloud what had gone wrong. They had expected to break him, to crush his will and prove the superiority of their species. But no matter what they did, no matter how many times they tested him, the soldier remained unbroken. It wasn't just his stoic silence that had begun to unsettle them. No, it was something far more subtle, something they hadn't noticed before. His eyes, once filled with the dull, exhausted look of a prisoner, now had a sharpness to them. They weren't empty. They weren't defeated. There was something else in those eyes, something they could neither name nor understand. But the most unnerving part? A smile. It was small, almost imperceptible at first, a slight curve of his lips when their gaze met. It wasn't a smile of submission, or even of defiance in the way they expected. It was something else entirely, a smile that conveyed understanding, a quiet sense of inner strength, the kind of smile that said, "I'm still here, and I'm not going anywhere." At first, they thought it was a fluke, just a momentary lapse in his otherwise steadfast composure. But as days passed, that smile began to appear more frequently, and with it, a creeping sense of discomfort began to settle among the aliens. Their initial amusement had shifted into something far less pleasant: doubt. "What are we missing?" one of the scientists muttered, running data through the analysis machine for the 100th time. "His physiology is average. His mental state is stable. There should be some crack, some point of weakness where we can reach him." Yet there was nothing. No panic, no plea for mercy. His brain scans had revealed a clarity that only deepened the mystery. The soldier's mind was locked in a state of resolute calm. His thoughts were not clouded with desperation or confusion, as they had expected. He wasn't struggling. He wasn't broken. He was at peace, a peace that had begun to unsettle them all. "Why does he still smile?" another alien asked, leaning over a console, their voice tinged with a growing sense of unease. "What does it mean?" The leader, who had initially dismissed the soldier as a mere curiosity, began to feel the weight of the soldier's unspoken challenge. The alien's violet skin seemed to shimmer unnaturally under the dim light of the observation room as they stared into the human's eyes. For the first time since his capture, doubt crept into their thoughts. Why had they even captured this human? What was so terrifying about a species they had once deemed insignificant? Why did this soldier's defiance gnaw at them so deeply? They had conquered entire galaxies, rendered species to rubble with a single command. Yet here was this one soldier, showing nothing but silent resistance. "Perhaps we underestimated them," the leader muttered, pacing in frustration. This one is not like the others. He has no fear, no desperation, only resolve. The words felt strange, almost foreign on their tongue. How could a species so weak still possess something as powerful as resolve? And what did that mean for the rest of humanity? In the quiet of the observation room, the soldiers began to feel something unfamiliar, a creeping sense of vulnerability. They had always thought of themselves as untouchable, unchallenged, and yet here they were, on the brink of being unseated by the very species they had dismissed. Their laughter, once a source of amusement, now echoed in their ears as a hollow, mocking reminder of their failure. "How long do we keep him like this?" one of the younger aliens asked, their voice laced with uncertainty. "How long before he becomes something more than just a captive?" The leader fell silent, staring at the soldier through the glass. The human's smile had faded, but his eyes still burned with that quiet, implacable resolve. It was as if the soldier had become something greater than the sum of his parts, a symbol of something the aliens couldn't grasp. The alien's mind raced. What did this soldier represent? What was it that made him different? The rest of the crew seemed to share the same unease, as if the soldier had become a mirror, reflecting their own cracks and insecurities. The doubts that had begun as mere whispers in the corners of their minds were now full-fledged questions that demanded answers. This human had become more than just an experiment. He had become a symbol, a reflection of their arrogance, their overconfidence. And with every flicker of that smile, every glance that met their gaze, the soldier's defiance grew stronger. What began as an experiment, a way to prove their superiority, was now something far more dangerous. They had not captured a weakling. They had captured a warrior who would soon remind them that there are things far more powerful than technology, more ancient than conquest, things like hope, willpower, and the quiet strength to endure. The soldier's silence had evolved into something far more powerful than anyone could have anticipated. What had once been the quiet resistance of a captive had transformed into a weapon. The aliens had underestimated the power of their own doubt. They had assumed that the human's silence was weakness, but now they were learning the hard way that it was not just a lack of words. It was a kind of defiance that could fracture even the most unshakable confidence. Day after day, the soldier's unwavering gaze bore down on them, and what had once seemed like a benign observation became a pressure that threatened to crush them. His eyes, unblinking and cold, held no malice, only an intensity that unsettled even the bravest among the crew. It was as if he knew something they didn't, something that made their grandiose technologies and superior strength seem utterly irrelevant. And with each passing moment, their belief in their own invulnerability began to crack, just like glass under a slow, relentless pressure. The alien leader, the one who had once scoffed at the humans' insignificance, found themselves pacing nervously, glancing over their shoulder as though expecting the soldier's gaze to follow them even when they weren't looking. It was subtle at first, an unease that they could not shake, but it grew, and soon others began to feel it too. "Why does he stare like that?" one of the younger crew members asked, their voice trembling. It's as if he knows something we don't." The leader shot them a glare, but it lacked the usual authority. "We've captured him. He's nothing more than a specimen." But even as the leader said it, the words felt hollow. The certainty they had once carried was slipping, dissolving in the face of the human's unyielding presence. There was something primal about it, something deeply unsettling. The soldier was no longer a weak human to be studied. He had become a symbol of something much larger. In the laboratories, The scientists tried to distract themselves with their work, focusing on tests, numbers, and data. But even the equations seemed to twist and warp under the weight of the soldiers' silent challenge. The flicker of doubt spread like a virus. One by one, the once proud aliens began to question everything they had known. Their superiority, their control. It was all slipping away, replaced by a creeping terror that they could not explain. Is it possible that a single human is capable of this? One of the researchers murmured to themselves, voice shaking, that we, the conquerors of so many worlds, are afraid of one man. The leader's patience was wearing thin, and they could feel the unease in the crew like a palpable force. The unity that had once been so tight, so unbreakable, was now riddled with fractures. The once confident alien soldiers started to avoid the human's gaze, unwilling to meet his unwavering stare. Even the quiet hum of the ship's engines seemed to grow louder in the stillness, as though the very walls were closing in. The soldier's smile, once a subtle curve of the lips, had begun to widen. It was as if he could sense the cracks forming in the alien's resolve. His stillness had become a kind of power, and in that power he found something deeply satisfying. He was no longer just a captive. He was a force, a presence that shook the very foundation of their superiority. Why do they tremble? He thought, a flicker of amusement stirring within him. They laugh at my weakness, but they fear my will. They thought they had broken me, but instead, I've broken them. And with that thought, the true realization dawned upon him. He was no longer at the mercy of his captors. No, now they were at his mercy. They had come for a human, expecting to crush him, to conquer him. But now they were the ones trembling, the ones cracking under the pressure of his quiet defiance. The atmosphere aboard the ship grew thick with tension, the air heavy with unspoken fears. The alien crew could no longer pretend that they were in control. The soldiers' silent challenge had unearthed something deep within them, a fear of the unknown, a fear of their own vulnerability. And in that fear, cracks began to form not just in their unity, but in their very understanding of what it meant to be powerful. The soldier's smile widened once more, his eyes still locked on the aliens with a quiet, steady gaze. To them, it was a smile that represented the impossible, the unthinkable. To him, it was simply a reflection of the truth they had ignored all along. That no matter how far they reached, no matter how many species they conquered, there were forces they could never control. And now, with each passing day, they were beginning to understand that a human soldier, silent and resolute, could be the one force that could unravel them all. The cracks in the alien crew's resolve had deepened beyond repair. Their once unshakable confidence had dissolved into a storm of panic and uncertainty. They had tried to break the soldier, tried to mold him into something weak, something that could be controlled, but instead, they had unknowingly awakened a force that they could neither understand nor contain. Now, instead of the silence of a prisoner, they faced the silence of a ticking bomb. They could feel it in the air. Something was coming. And it wasn't just the soldier's unyielding stare that weighed on them. It was the knowledge that they had underestimated something greater than themselves. The human will, once thought fragile, had become an indomitable force that no alien technology or psychology could dismantle. In their panic, the crew had grown reckless. The once meticulously organized and calculated nature of their operations had unraveled. Their movements became frantic, and in their haste, they began to make mistakes. They had started to lash out, to try and suppress the soldier more aggressively. But every action they took only solidified the fact that they had lost control. What they once saw as a mere curiosity, a specimen to be studied, had become their undoing. And then, in the dead of night, under the cloak of shadows and hidden beneath the thick hull of the alien vessel, the soldier made his move. It was flawless. He had spent days studying their routines, their weaknesses, the very pulse of the ship. Every corridor, every lock, every system was catalogued in his mind. He knew how to exploit every flaw, how to turn the vessel's own design against its creators. The soldier had become the predator, and the aliens, once so confident, had become the prey. With a single fluid motion, the soldier broke free from his confinement. The alarms blared, the ship's defenses screeched to life. But it was too late. The element of surprise was on his side. The once mighty ship, so carefully constructed and protected by the most advanced technology in the galaxy, now seemed fragile, like a paper tiger. The soldier was a storm, and the ship had no way of weathering it. He moved swiftly, silent as a shadow, cutting through the corridors with the precision of a scalpel. No alien was safe. The crew scrambled, trying to figure out how to deal with the sudden chaos, but the soldier was already one step ahead. The ship's security systems, once thought impenetrable, became useless against his mind. He had anticipated their every move, every countermeasure, and turned them into his advantage. The aliens, once so confident in their ability to control this human, now found themselves scrambling like ants in a crushed hill. Panic spread like wildfire through the corridors, and soon the ship was consumed by chaos. The soldiers who had once mocked the soldier now cowered in the corners, trying to hide, trying to escape the wrath of the human they had once thought so insignificant. The soldiers' movements were swift and deliberate, and with every step, the alien vessel grew more unstable. Systems failed. Power flickered. The hum of the ship that had once been a symbol of their superiority now echoed with the sound of impending doom. It was a slow burn, but in the end, it was inevitable. And then, with a final push, the soldier reached the heart of the vessel, the command center. The leader of the alien crew, the one who had thought themselves untouchable, stood at the helm, watching the destruction unfold. There was no bravado left in their eyes, only a deep, unspoken fear. The same fear that had slowly crept into the hearts of the entire crew. They were no longer the conquerors. They were the conquered. The soldier entered the command center, his face set in grim determination. The leader tried to speak, to command, to threaten, but there was no need. The soldier had already won. The entire alien vessel, built to withstand the might of entire worlds, was now a sinking ship. With a single motion, the soldier activated the ship's self-destruct sequence, the final step in his escape. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about sending a message that no one, not even the most advanced civilization, could ever truly control the human spirit. The explosion was deafening. The alien vessel, once a symbol of invincibility, now shattered into pieces. The sound of its destruction echoed across the stars, a final, resounding testament to the soldier's will. His captors, those who had once laughed at him, now lay at the bottom of the void, silenced forever. For the soldier, there was no celebration, no triumphal march. There was only the quiet satisfaction of knowing that, in the end, it was not technology or power that had won. It was the human spirit, the will to survive, the refusal to be broken. The universe, once so indifferent to humanity, had just learned a hard lesson. Never underestimate a human soldier. And as the soldier floated in the void, Surrounded by the remnants of the alien vessel, a single thought crossed his mind. "They thought they had me," he thought, his lips curling into a faint, knowing smile. "But it's not the ones with the biggest ships who win the battle. It's the ones who never give up." The soldier drifted through the vast emptiness of space, the silence surrounding him as he floated amidst the remains of the once proud alien vessel. The wreckage scattered around him was a grim reminder of what had been, an imposing symbol of their arrogance, now reduced to debris and echoes. He didn't look back. There was no need. The alien ship was gone, and with it, the threat it once posed. But the true victory, he realized, wasn't in the destruction of their technology or the collapse of their empire. It was in something far simpler, the knowledge that the aliens would never forget him. They had laughed at him, underestimated him, mocked his species as weak and insignificant. Now, as they floated in the aftermath of their defeat, they would be haunted by a single thought. The human they laughed at had bested them. As the soldier's thoughts drifted, a wave of grim satisfaction washed over him. It wasn't about revenge or some grand act of vengeance. It was about proving that, no matter how small or insignificant they might seem to others, humans had a way of surprising everyone when pushed too far. That's what the aliens had never understood. They had believed that their advanced technology, their superiority, was all they needed to dominate and control. But they had missed the most important part of the equation, the human spirit. He let out a deep breath, the sound of his exhale barely audible in the vacuum of space. Let them remember this, he thought, allowing the weight of the moment to sink in. Let them remember the one human who refused to break. It wasn't just about survival. It was about making them understand that no matter how hard they tried to crush humanity, they could never truly destroy what made humans who they were. Their resilience, their capacity for hope, and their refusal to yield. And somewhere, deep in the farthest reaches of space, the scattered remnants of the alien forces would undoubtedly recall that one soldier, the one who had looked death in the eye and smiled, the one who had shattered their confidence with nothing more than silence and sheer willpower. They would remember his name, though they had never learned it. They would remember his spirit, though they had tried to crush it. The soldier let himself float, weightless for a moment. The remnants of the alien ship drifted around him like a cosmic graveyard, the silence now a welcome companion. He had no destination. There was no need for one. He had done what he came to do: survive. The universe had learned something it would not soon forget. He could almost hear the faint whisper of the aliens' laughter now. It wasn't mocking. It wasn't triumphant. No. This was different. This was the kind of laugh that comes when you realize you've made a terrible mistake, when you realize that the joke was on you all along. It was the laugh of regret. As he floated, the soldier allowed himself a small smile. He didn't need to boast. He didn't need to gloat. His actions had already spoken louder than any words ever could. The aliens had underestimated him, had laughed at him. But now, they would regret it for the rest of their days, if they even had any days left to regret. The vastness of space stretched before him, cold and infinite. The soldier wasn't concerned with what lay ahead. There was a certain peace in knowing that he had stood tall when others thought him weak, that he had outlasted the very forces that sought to break him. Sometimes, the smallest of us can make the biggest difference, he mused, his voice almost a whisper, though there was no one to hear it. The universe had a strange way of evening the odds. his journey was far from over. He didn't know what the future held, and he didn't particularly care. All he knew was that the alien forces that had once dominated the stars would think twice before underestimating humanity again. The soldier had made sure of that. As the stars twinkled around him, distant and unmoving, the soldier closed his eyes, letting the cold silence of space embrace him. He had fought, he had survived, and in the end, he had proven that it was not the size of the ship or the might of an empire that determined victory. It was the indomitable will of a single human. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Sci-Fi Horizon Stories for more thrilling tales of science fiction and adventure.